Hi, I'm Dave Boer. On behalf of the entire Boer Insurance Group team, I want to thank you for allowing us to help manage your insurance program and to help guide you through the biggest changes to Michigan's auto insurance laws since 1974. This video pertains only to the personal injury protection medical expense portion of your auto insurance policy. So let's get started. Before we dive in, I want to explain a few terms that will be repeated several times in this presentation. On this slide, I'm showing a sample auto insurance declarations page. This is what you get every time your policy is up for renewal or when you make a change to your policy. This one happens to be from Auto Owners Insurance Company, but the concepts are the same among all the insurance companies we represent, and the declarations pages look quite similar. The first term is named insured. This refers to the people who are listed on the policy as named insureds or insureds, not necessarily the other household members who may be listed as drivers. The named insured is typically an individual, such as Jane Doe in this example, or a married couple. The second term is bodily injury liability, which is technically called residual bodily injury on this declarations page. This is your coverage for lawsuit protection. Lastly, we'll talk a lot about personal injury protection, because that's what most of the reform changes pertain to. I'm going to also refer to personal injury protection as PIP or PIP in this video. Now let's review the current PIP coverage that you have on your auto insurance policy. Everyone with a Michigan auto insurance policy has unlimited PIP coverage, which means there's no time limit or dollar limit on your coverage for medical expenses related to a car accident. The medical expense portion of your PIP covers hospital, surgical, and doctor's bills, as well as emergency room, prescription medications, and durable medical supplies such as wheelchairs and prosthetics. It also covers rehabilitation, necessary vehicle and home modifications in order to accommodate any physical limitations you may incur from a car accident, and the potentially very large expenses of attendant and skilled nursing care. Someone who is seriously injured in a car accident may need a lot of assistance in their daily life, possibly for the rest of their life. So the attendant and skilled nursing care is really important. As a case in point, we have a claim from 1994 that is still ongoing, and so far over $7.7 million has been paid, most of which at this point is for around-the-clock attendant care. The coverage I just described is contained in the red box and is the portion of your PIP coverage that is affected by the auto insurance reform law. When your policy renews after July 2nd, 2020, you'll need to decide how much coverage you want for these expenses. Also included in your PIP coverage, but not changing with the no-fault reform law, is coverage for loss of wages for someone who is not able to return to work following a car accident. This pays to replace 85% of your wage, up to about $65,000 per year right now, and for up to 3 years from the date of the accident. These lost wage benefits are also payable to the family of someone who dies from a car accident under the survivor's benefits portion. PIP also pays a burial expense and $20 per day for replacement services to pay someone to do chores around your house that you would have done yourself if you had not been injured in a car accident. As I mentioned, the only part of PIP that is affected by the no-fault reform legislation is the medical expense portion. The coverage for lost wages, survivor's benefits, burial expense, and replacement services is not affected and will remain just as it is right now. Again, going forward, you'll need to decide whether you want unlimited medical expense or a lower limit or none at all. Before we discuss your new PIP coverage options, I want to explain a term that will be important to know in determining which options are available to you. That term is qualified health coverage, which I'll refer to going forward as QHC. As defined in the no-fault reform legislation, qualified health care means health and accident coverage that does not exclude or limit coverage for injuries related to auto accidents and has an annual individual deductible of $6,000 or less, or Medicare Parts A and B. When your policy renews after July 2nd, 2020, you'll have several options available for your PIP coverage. Options 1 through 6 shown here correspond with the options shown on the coverage selection form that you'll receive from your insurance company prior to your policy renewal. Whether you have other health insurance, Medicare, or no medical insurance of any kind, you'll have the option to choose the same unlimited PIP medical expense coverage that you've always had. You can also choose to limit your PIP medical expense coverage to $500,000 or $250,000. Again, all three of these options are available for everyone, regardless of any other medical coverage you have. Option 4 is available for those who have qualified health coverage that is not Medicare, who want to exclude themselves and/or some or all family members from PIP medical expense coverage. We'll talk about this option in more detail in just a minute. Option 5 is available as an option only for Medicaid enrollees, and Option 6 is available only for people who have Medicare Parts A and B. We'll also discuss this in more detail later in this video. If you have qualified health coverage, you can still choose unlimited $500,000 or $250,000 for PIP coverage to apply to yourself and all family members who live with you. Or if you've got qualified health coverage, you can select option 4 to exclude PIP coverage for yourself and or any family members that have qualified health coverage. If you choose option 4, any family members who are not excluded will have a $250,000 PIP limit. For unknown reasons, the No Fault Reform Act did not make $500,000 or unlimited coverage available for those who remain covered under option 4. I'll give you some examples of how option 4 can be used. Number 1, parents have QHC but a child doesn't. The parents could be excluded from PIP coverage, and the child would remain covered for $250,000. Number 2, one spouse has QHC and the other doesn't. One spouse can be excluded, and the other would have $250,000 of coverage. Now, it's possible that both spouses have health insurance, but one of their plans may not be qualified health coverage because it excludes auto accidents or has a deductible higher than $6,000. This spouse would have to be covered for PIP. In a third example, parents and all children living at home have QHC. In this case, everyone can be excluded from PIP medical expense coverage. Just remember, any person to be excluded from PIP coverage has to have QHC in order to qualify to be excluded. And if you want to exclude anyone, all those who are not excluded will have a $250,000 PIP medical expense limit. So why would someone choose option 4? In order to reduce or eliminate the PIP medical expense premium. If some family members are covered and some are excluded, the premium will be lower than if the whole family is covered. And if everyone is excluded, the PIP medical expense premium is 0. Now you need to know that there are several Michigan-sized potholes to be considered before choosing option 4. The first, as I mentioned before, if you choose to exclude anyone from PIP medical expense coverage, all those who remain covered can only have $250,000 of coverage. Again, $500,000 and unlimited are not available under option 4 for those who remain covered. The second thing to be considered is, as you'll see in a few minutes, if you exclude PIP medical expense coverage and rely on your health insurance alone, there are some significant expenses that would be covered by PIP that are not covered by health insurance. So option 4 leaves some large gaps in coverage. And a third reason is, adding to the danger factor, if someone who is excluded from PIP loses their QHC and forgets to add PIP coverage to their auto policy, they won't have any medical expense coverage for auto accidents after 30 days. For the first 30 days after losing QHC, the Michigan Assigned Claims Plan, which is the state fund for people injured in car accidents who don't have PIP coverage anywhere, such as someone who doesn't own a car, will cover up to $2 million. But after 30 days pass, the MACP covers nothing under these circumstances. So it's important for anyone excluded from PIP medical expense coverage to call their auto insurance agent immediately upon losing their QHC so that PIP coverage can be added to their auto insurance policy. Now let's talk about option 6, the policy-wide exclusion. Option 6 is for people on Medicare who want to exclude PIP medical expense coverage for themselves and everyone in the family who lives in their home. This is different from option 4, which allows you to exclude some family members and include others. Option 6 excludes PIP medical expense coverage for everyone in the family who lives in the home. In order to use option 6, The named insured must be enrolled in Medicare Parts A and B, and everyone else in the family must have Medicare, QHC, or their own auto insurance policy with PIP medical expense coverage. So here are some examples of how option 6 might be used. Number 1, if you're a single person living alone and you have Medicare Parts A and B, you can choose this option. Number 2, if you're a married couple and you both have Medicare Parts A and B, you can choose this option. It's also available to a married couple if one has Medicare Parts A and B and the other has QHC, such as when one spouse is retired and one is still living. Number 3, if you're a married couple who are both enrolled in Medicare Parts A and B and have a child living with you who has his own QHC or his own auto insurance policy with PIP medical expense coverage, you can use this option. But if there are any family members in your home who don't have Medicare, QHC, or their own auto insurance policy with PIP medical expense coverage, you cannot use option 6. You must choose one of the PIP coverage options, either unlimited, $500,000, or $250,000 to cover all family members living in your home. The reason someone would choose option 6 is to eliminate the PIP medical expense premium from their auto insurance policy. Keep in mind that the other elements of personal injury protection coverage will still remain on the policy, but you just won't have the PIP medical expense portion. As you'll see later in this video, relying solely on Medicare instead of PIP medical expense coverage leaves some significant gaps in coverage. So we don't recommend this option, but it is available for those willing to accept the risks in exchange for eliminating their PIP medical expense premium. And keep in mind that you don't have to choose option 6 just because you have Medicare Parts A and B. You can still select unlimited, $500,000, or $250,000 for PIP medical expense coverage. Similar to option 4, if someone who is excluded from your PIP medical expense coverage loses their qualified health coverage or cancels their auto insurance policy, you'll need to add PIP coverage to your policy as soon as possible, or that person won't have any source of medical coverage for auto accidents after 30 days. The no-fault reform law requires insurance companies to reduce premiums for PIP medical expense coverage, not the premium for the entire policy, by certain average percentages across their entire book of business, which means that premium reductions will vary quite a bit from one policyholder to another depending on a whole assortment of rating variables. Some people may see reductions higher or lower than these amounts, but the insurance company's overall premiums for all policyholders combined have to meet these reduction percentages. The average premium reduction for unlimited coverage is 10%. This is possible and mandated because the reform law implements a medical fee schedule for auto insurance for the first time ever. So instead of auto insurance companies paying 4 to 6 times what Medicare pays for medical services, they'll only have to pay a little over 2 times what Medicare pays going forward. In the past, because auto insurance companies couldn't use fee schedules, they paid much higher fees for the same services than health insurance, work comp insurance, or Medicare paid, because all of those entities use fee schedules. Insurance companies will need to reduce the PIP medical expense premium by an average of 20% for those who choose a $500,000 limit, 35% for a $250,000 limit, and 35 to 100% for those who choose option 4. This will depend on how many people in the family are covered versus excluded. An average of 45% will apply for those who choose a $50,000 limit, and the PIP medical expense premium will be eliminated entirely for those who qualify for and choose option 6. For anyone considering opting out of PIP coverage via options 4 or 6, you need to be aware that there are some very significant differences between the PIP coverage on an auto insurance policy and the coverage provided by health insurance and Medicare. First thing is the deductible. The deductible on PIP coverage is usually between $300 and $500, and it applies only once per accident. For health insurance and Medicare, the deductible resets every year. So if your medical treatment from a car accident covers several years, you'll be paying your deductible every year. The same is true with copays. There are none with PIP, and they reset each year with health insurance and Medicare. The next several items are really important. If you're hurt in a car accident and relying on the PIP coverage to pay your medical bills, they will be paid for the rest of your life, even if you cancel your auto insurance policy the day after the accident. As long as you had PIP medical expense coverage on the day of the accident, your bills will be paid forever or until your PIP policy limit is used up if you choose a limit less than unlimited. With health insurance, not only do your deductibles and copays get reset each year, but you have to continue to be covered under the plan or else you won't have coverage for any current medical bills. If you're injured in a car accident this year and you'll need treatment and rehab for several years, but you lose your job and or health insurance next year or after, your bills won't be paid. Or if you are able to continue work, but your employer changes to a health insurance plan that excludes auto accidents, you're out of luck. The next two items, attendant care and skilled nursing care, are covered by PIP medical expense coverage, but not by health insurance or Medicare. As I noted in our $7.7 million claim, these expenses can be enormous, so anyone who chooses a limited amount of PIP coverage or excludes it altogether needs to recognize this. As noted at the bottom of this screen, about 57% of PIP claim payments for people who are catastrophically injured in an auto accident are for attendant care and skilled nursing care, neither of which is covered by health insurance or Medicare. So opting out of PIP is quite risky in our view. So here are our recommendations for your PIP medical expense coverage. We're recommending unlimited PIP medical coverage instead of limited coverage of $500,000 or $250,000 because we've seen several claims that easily exceeded $500,000, especially when attendant care was required. And we're recommending unlimited PIP instead of excluding coverage under options 4 or 6 for the following reasons. Number one, the PIP medical deductible only applies once, and there are no co-payments or coinsurance. Those items reset each year with health insurance and Medicare. Number two, because health insurance and Medicare don't cover attendant care or skilled nursing care. These are huge expenses. Number three, because health insurance requires you to be in the plan at the time of the medical service, not just at the time of the accident. So there's the risk of not having the right health insurance in place to cover medical treatment in the future from a car accident that takes place today. And number four, if someone who is excluded under option 4 because they have qualified health coverage loses their qualified health coverage and forgets to add PIP coverage to their auto insurance policy within 30 days, they will have no medical coverage at all for car accidents. This concludes our video on personal injury protection medical expense coverage. Check out our other videos for information on the changes to the bodily injury liability coverage of your auto insurance policy and how to complete the coverage election forms. Thanks for watching.